Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just looked FBI Director Kash Patel dead in the eyes and completely dismantled his authority on national television, delivering a bombshell confrontation that left the entire room utterly stunned.
Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that
That's
you are
false.
the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. When people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe, I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacist, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. I don't have any confidence in you. And honestly, I've not heard anything out of you today that makes me believe that you're going to do anything about the white supremacy problem, the one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches.
If you want to understand how the most powerful law enforcement agency on earth is being systematically dismantled from the inside out, you need to hear exactly what happened in this explosive congressional hearing. We are diving deep into the unprecedented weaponization of the Bureau, a terrifying 14-year staffing crisis, and the chilling reality of what happens to American national security when the fox is officially guarding the henhouse.
I'll respond. Kash Patel, as I said when I introduced him, public defender, former prosecutor, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, and FBI Director. I think that's a pretty good resume for the guy who's now running the top law enforcement agency in our country, and we've seen all the stats that he's given to the committee on how much better they're doing at getting the bad guys than the previous guy was doing. With that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I think you're witnessing some auditions, clickbait auditions for the Academy Award for my Democratic colleagues. We'll see how they fare as they're on MSNBC later on today. But do you care, before I launch into my line of questioning, to respond to Ms. Crockett from Texas on that very elaborate and theatric display?
Here's what I've learned in my government service. I don't give a damn what they say about me as long as I'm succeeding in the mission. We're succeeding in the mission because the men and women of the FBI have never been empowered to do more work and to hit the streets harder than by President Trump's authorities and resources he's given us. And so all I care about is that we are capturing more child predators than ever before, taking more drugs off the streets than ever before, that we are capturing murderers at a significantly historic rate, and we're delivering this country the lowest murder rate in recorded history. That are facts that you cannot dispute. But you can come at me all you want. I don't care.
Right from the very first moments of this highly volatile exchange, Representative Jasmine Crockett refused to hold back, instantly stripping away any illusion of standard congressional decorum. She stared directly at Kash Patel and explicitly branded him as the least qualified FBI director in the entire history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This was not merely a rhetorical jab, it was a devastating statement of fact. Prior to being handed the keys to this incredibly sensitive intelligence and law enforcement apparatus, Patel had never spent a single day working inside the FBI. He had absolutely zero field experience, he carried no badge, and he had never worked a single FBI case. To truly grasp the gravity of this situation, you have to contrast Patel's frictionless ascension with the grueling reality faced by actual career agents. Real FBI agents are required to endure an agonizing gauntlet of brutal background checks, deeply intrusive psychological evaluations, stringent lie detector tests, and years of hellish, exhausting training just to earn the privilege of serving. Yet, according to the damning picture painted during this hearing, Kash Patel managed to skip every single one of those mandatory operational steps. He bypassed the entire rigorous vetting process required by the agency, all because of one singular defining attribute: his blind loyalty to Donald Trump. When confronted with his glaring lack of traditional law enforcement credentials, Patel attempted to defend his position by wrapping himself in the narrative of the immigrant experience. He confidently declared to the committee that he is the living embodiment of the American dream. He pointed to himself as a first-generation Indian kid who miraculously rose to lead the law enforcement community of the greatest nation on God's green earth, arguing that such an ascent could not happen anywhere else in the world. However, Patel's attempt to frame his tenure as an inspirational triumph was immediately shattered by Crockett's fierce and unflinching reality check. She fundamentally challenged the prevailing narrative that Americans feel safer under his leadership. In a moment of absolute clarity, she declared that she does not know who actually feels safe in this country right now, with one terrifying exception: white supremacists. Speaking directly from her lived experience, Crockett emphatically stated that as a black woman, she definitely does not feel safe in America today. She looked at the director of the FBI and told him she has absolutely zero confidence in him. She condemned him for failing to say anything during the hearing that would make her believe he has any intention of combating the virulent problem of white supremacy. This is not an abstract political talking point. It is a matter of life and death. Crockett vividly described a nation where innocent children are being gunned down and shot in the streets, and where everyday members of the community are being murdered simply while they are working or worshiping in their churches. While these communities are transformed into literal war zones, the FBI under Patel's watch remains dangerously, deafeningly silent. The terrifying real-world consequences of this silence were demonstrated almost immediately. The very day after this explosive congressional hearing took place, domestic terrorists launched targeted attacks against historically black colleges and universities. In the wake of these terrifying incidents, the FBI offered absolutely no response to the public. There were no official alerts issued, no press conferences held, and no reassurances given, leaving black communities completely ignored and desperately asking how they ended up in a situation where their safety is perpetually disregarded. The nightmare Crockett exposed extends far beyond just terrible optics and inaction. It points to a systemic, aggressive dismantling of the Bureau from within. She explicitly accused Patel of acting as an instrument of political revenge, pointing out that even before he was officially confirmed by the Senate, that he was already actively targeting dedicated career officials to direct illegal firings. These seasoned professionals were allegedly hunted down not because of any professional misconduct, but simply because they were deemed insufficiently loyal to Trump. Crockett noted that the cases Patel was so allegedly upset about, the ones tied to Trump, were actually brought forward during the tenure of Trump's own hand-picked previous FBI director. This is textbook weaponization, transforming an independent law enforcement body into a personal, vindictive tool for the executive branch. Senator Durbin corroborated this horrific internal purge, citing credible whistleblower accounts detailing Patel's direct, hands-on involvement during the transition period. Highly experienced career agents, men and women who had spent decades meticulously building major criminal cases, suddenly woke up to find their names placed on an arbitrary termination list. The internal chaos and targeted retribution became so severe that the FBI Agents Association, a professional group that had initially welcomed Patel's confirmation, was ultimately forced to file a federal lawsuit just to protect its own dedicated members from this unhinged purge. The legal fallout from Patel's actions is massive. Former acting director Brian Driscoll, alongside a coalition of other senior officials, filed a federal lawsuit officially accusing Patel and his administration of executing illegal political retribution. These former officials claim that Patel explicitly told them directly that his own employment depended entirely on his willingness to remove agents who had previously worked on sensitive investigations involving the president. By aggressively pushing out highly qualified experts and rapidly replacing them with blind loyalists, Patel has engineered a catastrophic, self-inflicted staffing crisis within the Bureau. During his testimony before the Senate, Patel made a jaw-dropping admission. He explicitly stated that it will take a staggering 14 years to get the FBI fully staffed and capable of doing their jobs again. Let that number sink in. This was not presented as a minor administrative hiccup. This was a horrifying on-the-record admission that the primary agency responsible for protecting the United States from federal crimes and terrorism will be operating with a severely depleted skeleton crew for the foreseeable future. While the agency hemorrhages talent, the remaining resources are being wildly mismanaged. According to an opinion piece citing reporting from MS Now, the Bureau has seen its workforce slashed by roughly 6% under Patel's highly controversial leadership. But the crisis deepens when you look at where the remaining agents are being sent. Internal counts and reporting from the New York Times reveal that more than 20% of the FBI's highly trained workforce has been forcibly reassigned to handle immigration enforcement. Patel is actively pulling experienced agents and specialized analysts away from vital domestic extremism investigations, counterterrorism efforts, counterintelligence operations, cybercrime units, and violent gun crime investigations. Instead of neutralizing imminent threats to American citizens, these highly trained federal investigators are being redirected to play the role of street-level ICE agents. The real-world cost of these massively misplaced operational priorities is measured in the sheer terror experienced by American families. Crockett did not just bring rhetoric to the hearing, she came armed with receipts. She revealed that multiple Republican lawmakers have been subjected to horrifying death threats simply for voting against Jim Jordan during the contentious House Speaker race. One specific Republican colleague was even forced to announce their departure from Congress altogether because anonymous callers were constantly threatening his wife's life. The harassment escalated to the terrifying point where the lawmaker's wife felt compelled to sleep with a loaded firearm just for basic protection. Crockett rightfully demanded to know how the American public can have any faith in an FBI that ignores these glaring, violent realities while the director is busy gutting the agency's most qualified personnel to put on a political reality show. The structural rot detailed in this explosive hearing extends beyond Patel himself, deeply infecting the very top of the organizational chart. Almost nobody is talking about the terrifying reality of Patel's handpicked second-in-command, Deputy Director Dan Bongino. Bongino walked right into this incredibly sensitive national security role with the exact same glaring problem as his boss. Absolute zero internal FBI experience. His professional background consists of serving as a Secret Service agent before pivoting to a lucrative career as a podcaster and a highly partisan Fox News commentator. For years, Bongino sat behind a microphone on his show, aggressively branding the FBI as irredeemably corrupt and openly advocating for the entire agency to be completely disbanded. Now, this exact same man sits as the second in command of the Bureau. For the first time in the FBI's 117-year history, both the director and deputy director positions have been handed to complete outsiders with absolutely no internal experience. Two of the most powerful and sensitive law enforcement seats in the entire country are currently filled by men who have never run a single FBI case between them. Journalist Mark Fisher, who thoroughly profiled Patel for The New Yorker, explained the situation plainly on NPR's Fresh Air. Patel secured this immense power based strictly on loyalty and a demonstrated willingness to ruthlessly pursue Trump's perceived enemies, absolutely not on his credentials. Fisher describes a horrifying transformation, depicting an FBI that is being fundamentally reshaped around partisan antagonism rather than objective criminal investigation. A dangerous dynamic the Bureau has never witnessed before. One former senior official bleakly characterized this unprecedented takeover as total institutional decapitation. Inside the Bureau, the atmosphere is toxic. Hundreds of dedicated national security professionals have either been explicitly fired or have simply walked away in sheer disgust. They are fleeing a manufactured culture of intense fear, where strict loyalty tests are demanded, where internal polygraphs are routinely weaponized to target anyone leaking information about Patel, and where agents live under the constant, looming threat of being the very next name on the chopping block. The resulting brain drain is something current, and former agents describe as completely unprecedented. Decades of irreplaceable counterterrorism and counterintelligence expertise are rapidly walking right out the door at the exact moment the United States is facing heightened, relentless threats from hostile foreign adversaries like Iran and an unending wave of Chinese espionage. When faced with this overwhelming avalanche of meticulously sourced accusations and detailed failures, Patel's defense was nothing short of a spectacular collapse in substance. After Jasmine Crockett methodically dismantled his leadership with undeniable facts and receipts, Patel appeared so incapable of defending his own disastrous record that the committee chairman physically had to step in. Like a desperate defense lawyer speaking for a client who cannot articulate his own case, the chairman resorted to reading Patel's resume out loud to the room, desperately listing his past roles as a public defender, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, and a Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. When Patel finally mustered the courage to speak for himself, he did not offer transparency, he offered pure, unadulterated arrogance. He dismissively accused his Democratic critics of merely performing clickbait auditions for the Academy Award, claiming they were just trying to get on MSNBC later that day. Then, he uttered the phrase that perfectly encapsulates his entire tenure. "I don't give a damn what they say about me as long as I'm succeeding in the mission." To prove this supposed success, Patel frantically rattled off a series of highly questionable statistics, claiming that because of the authorities and resources provided by President Trump, the FBI was hitting the streets harder than ever. He claimed they were capturing more child predators than ever before, taking historic amounts of drugs off the streets, and capturing murderers at a significantly historic rate. He triumphantly declared that he was personally delivering this country the lowest murder rate in recorded history, capping off this arrogant display with a glaring, highly embarrassing grammatical error on national television. That are facts that you cannot dispute. The irony, of course, is that those facts were immediately and thoroughly disputed. In a devastating segment on MS Now, correspondent Ken Delanian and Michael Feinberg, a highly experienced former FBI assistant special agent in charge, ruthlessly scrutinized Patel's go-to numbers and labeled them as basically bogus. Feinberg expertly explained that the FBI under Patel has artificially widened the categories it uses to count arrests, deliberately taking unearned credit for the dangerous boots-on-the-ground field work that state and local law enforcement agencies actually performed. Furthermore, Patel's boast about delivering historic lows in the murder rate completely ignores a fundamental reality of the American justice system. Murder is generally not even a federal crime. The FBI has very little direct impact on the national murder rate. When Patel stands before Congress claiming credit for these statistics, he is simply taking borrowed credit for the hard work done by other departments to mask his own institutional failures. Even Patel's own social media propaganda spectacularly backfired. When he proudly posted a homicide chart with the caption "Leadership Matters," observant viewers quickly pointed out that the data presented didn't even break out numbers from his own specific tenure. True to form, Patel never even bothered to respond to the criticism. Representative Crockett did not let Patel's obsession with social media clout slide, utterly humiliating him over his constant need for digital validation. She pointed out that he erroneously posted not once, but twice, desperately trying to take a premature victory lap for capturing a suspect. The devastating truth behind this so-called FBI victory is that the agency didn't actually make the capture at all. The suspect literally confessed online, and it was the suspect's own parents who ultimately decided to turn their child in to authorities. Crockett bluntly stated she was confused about what the FBI was actually doing, other than trying to put on a pathetic show for Patel's political boss. Patel's terrifying lack of professional judgment bleeds into his personal conduct as well, raising massive red flags about his fitness for duty. Multiple deeply concerning reports detail how Patel has repeatedly abused government resources, including inappropriately utilizing highly expensive FBI jets and agency personnel for personal trips specifically tied to his girlfriend's events. Perhaps the most alarming indictment of his incompetence occurred during the highly sensitive Charlie Kirk assassination investigation. While a dangerous killer was actively on the loose and the situation was incredibly volatile, the director of the FBI was not in a command center coordinating a nationwide manhunt. Instead, Patel was reportedly dining in a fancy Manhattan restaurant, taking time out of his meal to tweet entirely false information claiming that the suspect was already safely in custody. This staggering level of incompetence and deeply flawed judgment has alienated even his most staunch political allies. Prominent figures within the MAGA world have publicly questioned his ability to lead, with influential conservative commentator Christopher Rufo openly calling for Patel's immediate removal from office. When you step back and look at the entirety of this congressional showdown, the grammar slip on national television isn't the real story. It is merely a symptom, a perfect symbol of a deeply arrogant director who is vastly over his head, entirely obsessed with protecting his own lucrative position, and dangerously detached from the catastrophic institutional damage happening directly on his watch. He desperately wants the American public to focus on his cherry-picked, manipulated numbers so they won't notice that the institution itself is being hollowed out from within. This is no longer a conversation about partisan politics or typical Washington gridlock. This is an existential crisis regarding whether the Federal Bureau of Investigation can still functionally perform its fundamental duty of protecting American citizens from very real, very imminent, violent threats. When the people who know the Bureau best, the seasoned veterans and national security experts, are leaving in droves, America becomes inherently less safe. When critical investigative resources are shamelessly diverted to serve petty political priorities, innocent people are left vulnerable. And when the director himself arrogantly refuses to answer basic questions about the glaring failures, the death threats, and the internal rot happening under his command, the terrifying truth becomes undeniable. The grave danger facing this country isn't just coming from foreign adversaries or hidden extremist cells. It is coming directly from the very top of the agencies sworn to stop them.